Hello, my name is Steve and I live in Ardlean with my wife Julie. We've been married for 42 years. My son Ben and his two children, Ashton and Olivia, my grandchildren. We go to Hope Church and I also work in the Royal Shrewsbury Hospital. I want to talk to you today about dealing with conflict. Really, the most significant conflicts that I've had to deal with have never been short. So I'm not going to pretend to you today that there's a panacea or an easy cure. This is about my experience and how I have found ways of coping with conflict. Not always the best ways. As a child and a young person, I lived with a lot of conflict in my home. And I had very little tools to deal with the conflict. So because of that, I acted instinctively. And the instincts were to become invisible, to become compliant, to try and be a peacemaker, but it also makes you quite a fearful person. And I would say that those traits have probably been through my life up until today, because what we learn as children and young people tends to stay with us. And I had no tools at that time, but as I got older, I began to know myself better. I believe really that was part of being part of a family, a church family. That really helped because I saw other people. I got a different perspective. I learned to pray. I think out of desperation probably, and fear and anxiety. My prayers were to change the world that I lived in, to sort it out. But I came across a verse in James as a young person, and it was this. James says, if anyone lacks wisdom, let him ask God. And I certainly knew that I lacked wisdom for the situations I was finding myself in. So I used to constantly pray that prayer and still do. If anyone lacks wisdom, ask God. And I would say that's a really good starting point. In a conflict situation, ask God for wisdom. The other thing that I've found as well as I've added to the toolbox of life, I guess, and with experience is this. Grace and kindness can often melt situations. When you've been kissed by the grace of God and you know that sense of God's forgiveness, it gives you a resource. It puts into you the resource to show grace to others, to show kindness to others. And sometimes that can melt the conflict situation, the person's reaction. But I would say this, not always. There are some people who enjoy conflict. I call these spiky people. I've come across a few in my time. People who just seem to enjoy conflict, enjoy clashes. And that has always worried me and caused me concern, probably because of my past. Often causes me to reflect inwardly. So my starting point for dealing with conflict is this. Pray. Pray first of all. Then I would say this, and this has been helpful to me, talk to wise people. I've been very fortunate in my life to have wise people, generally in the church family, who I could talk to. Never bottle it up. Never hold it in. Talk to people. Get perspective. We live under Rodney's pillar, and if you to walk to the top of Rodney's pillar, you get a different perspective from what you would on the ground. It shows you much more. I think when you talk to other people, you can get a different perspective of yourself. You can learn things about yourself, but you can also get a different perspective of the situation, and it really does help. Reflect, take time to reflect. Lots of our lives are lived in quite a rush and quite a lot of busyness. And when we have conflict, we can either try to avoid it, but we don't always reflect on it. It's really helpful to reflect. Own what's yours, own what's mine. Some of the things I can change. Some of the things are about me. Some of the things I cause conflict. So reflect. Make those changes. Look at what you can do. But also try and get that reflection that gives you a big picture of what's going on. I've often found that in spiky people, if you are able to have a conversation and talk to them and listen's a key word. If you listen to them, you'll find the spikiness comes from somewhere. The aggression comes from somewhere. The sense that they have to fight the world comes from somewhere. It'll be something that they've experienced. It's been a learned behavior, maybe as a survival mechanism for them to come out fighting. And it helps to reflect. Show grace and kindness. I can remember times when I've been praying as I'm going to places and saying, God, please help me to be kind. Help me to just do something that's over and above what I need to do to show kindness. And God gives us that resource. He resources us if we ask him to do that. And lastly, I would say this: if it's in your ability, if the conflict belongs in some part to you, don't let the sun go down on your wrath. If you can apologize, if you can make it right, if you can sort it out, Proverbs tells us, don't let the sun go down on your wrath. I pray that these thoughts will have been of some help if you find yourself in a conflict situation. God bless you.